Hello, my I Can Relate family, and thanks for tuning in. I hope you heard the episode last week on having a parent in prison. It was so insightful. Today, we're sitting down with Tatyana, and she shares with us what it's like to be bipolar. And this is one of those episodes where I feel like there's still quite a stigma around the word bipolar. And I think stigmas really stem from lack of understanding. So today you're going to hear about what is bipolar? What does it mean to Tatyana in her life? When was she diagnosed? What were the symptoms? Did this start in childhood, in teenage years? And I guess the next part is, how does it impact her everyday life, her relationships, her friendships, her job? And how does she manage her triggers? Enjoy the episode.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Where are you dialing in from?
I live in New Hampshire, USA. Do you live in Bermuda?
I do. Yes. Well, right
That
now.
is so
Yeah.
cool. That
Thank
is
you.
so cool. Because when you said Bermuda time, I was like, oh, no way. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Tatyana, before we dive in.
Yeah. So I am 22. I I run this Instagram account, Having Bipolar, where I kind of just share about my experiences with bipolar, and I've worked really hard to make it a safe space for people with bipolar disorder, even loved ones, people who have loved ones with bipolar disorder, to talk about their experience and kind of just have a community where you can talk about some of the uncomfortable things and some of the things that maybe aren't pretty to
Yeah.
talk about, I guess. And so that's really what the book's all about. And I'm so excited to be working on it. And hopefully it'll come out soon.
That's really cool. Have you got a title yet?
Thank you. I I don't know. I think I do. The
Yeah.
working title at this moment, it'll probably stay the same because I do like it. I think the title will be What Would My Therapist Say? Just because that's kind of the whole vibe of the book is just I want you to not be your own therapist, but just explore your inner workings like a therapist would.
Ooh.
Like that's what I want. I want you to just sit with the uncomfortable and uneasy thought and just explore what it does to you. What does it make you think? What does it prompt you to feel? What thoughts come out when you think this one thought? Just
Yeah.
follow the domino effect of it all and explore yourself.
That's really interesting that that's what the book's about, because I actually was doing a meditation the other day, and the theme was to treat your thoughts like a soundtrack, especially the
Mm.
ones that have been on repeat for years, for decades, and to recognize, like what you're saying, what that thought does to you. Does it make you anxious? Does it make you sad? Um, and to have a mindful moment to be like, oh, there's that song again. I'm going to change the track. So
Hmm.
I like what you're saying of actually taking a moment instead of changing the track, right? Explore, why is it playing? And
Yeah.
yeah, I really like that. Cool.
Thank
So,
you.
so
Thank you.
would you share with us what being bipolar, having bipolar means for you?
I think for me, it's kind of like living on a tightrope in a way. You walk along the tightrope, and at any moment, you could fall either to the right or the left. And let's say the right is mania and the left is depression. And so it's just walking on a very thin tightrope, wondering, like, oh my gosh, if I teeter and I totter, will I end up in the depression? Will I end up in the mania? And just trying to stay balanced, even though it can be really difficult. It's like if you were two cliffs. Have you seen those videos of people tightroping along like cliffs? Have you seen
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Yes, it's kind of like that. Like you could fall at any moment, and when you fall, it feels like it'll never stop, and it feels like you could just die, and you might fall. Thankfully, I wear a harness because I received treatment and I'm on medicine. And so I wear a harness so that when I do fall, because it will happen, relapse is a part of everything. When I do fall, I can get back up. It might not take it might take a little while, but I just try to, walk my tightrope as gracefully and gently as I can and acknowledge that when I do fall, it's totally okay because mistakes happen and we're only human. And I just fall and I get back up and I do better and I learn from my experience and I keep going,
Yeah.
because that's all you can do.
Yeah. I think people are very familiar with the word depression, but not so much the word mania. What is mania?
Oh, great conversation. So I can't speak to everybody's mania. I can really only speak to mine and what I know about how people experience it. So my mania, essentially, it kind of feels like doing like cocaine. It feels like being on drugs. It is this very, very elated, euphoric feeling. I become very excited. I talk really quickly. I become super obsessive over things. And I experience delusions and some psychosis when I'm like full blown manic, meaning I haven't been receiving treatment and maybe I've been manic for a couple of weeks or a month at that point, and I'm really just a little out of my mind, to be completely honest. I know for other people, it can look like impulsivity, stealing, reckless spending, a lot of impulsive sex, and a lot of people cheat on their partners, and things like that. It can be really ugly. It can be really, really ugly. And it's difficult because I feel like it's the type of thing where you make so many mistakes
Mm.
when you're manic that you want to be accountable, but on the other hand, it's like, I know that I did these things, but it wasn't me at the same time because I'm not myself when I'm manic or depressed. When I'm manic, I get really irritable. A lot of people get really angry. Um, and it's just this completely other side of me, and it's scary. It's really scary. In the beginning, it's not as scary because I get really productive and I can get a lot done and I'm not sleeping at all. And it's great. And I'm productive and I'm overconfident and I feel amazing in myself. But then it can turn over to ugly really, really quickly, where I start experiencing psychosis and extreme paranoia, and I'm not sleeping and I'm not eating, and suddenly I'm doing all these reckless things that I shouldn't be doing, and I'm ruining relationships and I'm yelling at people I care about, and it can be a really ugly thing. And so for me, I'm probably more scared of the mania than the depression. Mania also has a high risk for death because a lot of people will, like, a few years ago, I believed while I was delusional that I could fly. And that, I believe, is a common delusion among people. I think people also get this, they believe they're God or they can talk to God type of things. And so when people get to that place, like when you believe you can fly, you can just jump off something and
Mm.
that could be it. And so mania can be just as, if not more dangerous as depression in terms of self-injury.
Mm.
And I do know some people self-harm while they're manic. And so this completely other it's a completely other world compared to depression, but it's just as scary and unpleasant.
Yeah. Wow. For you, after the mania, does it go straight to depression or do you get back on the tightrope?
Um, well, I know when I'm unmedicated, which I've been successfully medicated for a while, and I'm really grateful for that because I know finding meds for some people can be really difficult. But for me, typically my episodes last for about a month, and I can go from manic to depressed. And usually the depression is triggered by something. Like something will go wrong, and maybe instead of being irritable, now I'm just really devastated about it. There's also something called mixed episodes, which are really weird to describe because unless you've experienced it, I'm not sure if you can understand it. Even when I experience it, it's such an uncomfortable, odd feeling. You have the hopelessness and the worthlessness of the depression, but the energy and the productivity of the mania. And it's this
Mm.
really uncomfortable in between where, let's say I'm on the tightrope and I fell off and I'm swinging between the depression and the mania. At some point, I'm not back on the tightrope, but I'm kind of just like still in the middle. And
Mm.
it's this really uncomfortable middle place where you're experiencing some of the mania symptoms and some of the depression symptoms all at the same time, and there's really no other way that I can describe it except it's an uncomfortable feeling of being energetic and not energetic at the same exact time.
And for you, how long do your depressive episodes? You said a month for the mania. How long for the depressive episode?
They're usually about the same. It can be anywhere for me for about like 2 to 4 weeks for both. And when I am cycling, like I still do mini cycles being on my meds because I don't think the meds are a cure all. They're not. They're not. Just myth, bust that myth. Meds are not a cure all. You can't just fix it all with medication and hope all your problems will go away. I wish. Oh my God, I wish. Um, but it's just like both my episodes last about a month when I'm like unmedicated. And when I'm medicated, typically it's like 2 weeks ish. And it's not as extreme. It's definitely more dulled down, but you can feel it because you go from not quite depressed and like a I want to kill myself, but just depressed and I've lost passion, I've lost my drive, I've lost my ability to do things I enjoy and I feel worthless. And then going to a place where suddenly I have all these ideas and I have all this inspiration, I have all this energy to be productive and do these things. And then I don't anymore. And
Mm,
then I go back on it and then I don't. And it's just like this exhausting cycle of like, okay, I'm going to do all these things. And then while I'm manic, I take on projects. I mean, I encourage myself to get all these things done. And then when I get depressed, I'm like, shit, why did I do all this? Why did I take this all on? Like, I can't do it now. And it
yeah.
can just be a really overwhelming, exhausting cycle of like, work hard, don't have energy to do anything, you
Yeah.
know?
Where do you think you are right now?
Honestly, I've been really depressed lately. There's been a lot of crap going on that has put me in a really bad place. I self-harmed for the first time in a really long time, which has been hard for me. And I've just been in a really low place, just trying to get back to my median.
Mm,
I a lot of people with bipolar disorder will go off their medication. Some people will go off of it because it makes them feel numb. Others will go off of it because they miss the mania. Some people will go off of it because they just don't feel like themselves. And I was talking to my boyfriend about this last night, actually. I was reflecting on a time in my life where I had a lot of drive and a lot of passion, and I was so productive and doing so well. And I was unmedicated at the time, and I was telling him, I was like, I really wish that I was back there because I'm at a place now where I need all those things I used to have, the drive and the passion and the love for life, and I don't have them anymore. And I thought, I was like, maybe if I went off my meds, I'd get that back and then I could go back on them really quick before it went bad.
mm.
And he was like, and even my therapist was like, no, that's a horrible idea. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been in this low place where I've really wanted to just go off my meds and hope that the mania would fix the parts of me that are broken, even
Mm,
though there's probably things going on deeper down that are causing most of it.
yeah.
Um, and I've just been feeling really lost in my life and directionless, which is so different than I've ever felt before.
Yeah.
And so lately I've just kind of just been questioning my whole entire existence.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That must be like quite a scary place to be in. And
It is. It's super uncomfortable.
yeah, do you feel like you have the support system? I know you said you've got the harness on. Do you feel like it's
Oh
in
yeah.
place right now?
Oh yeah. My support system is always there. I have the best people in my life who are always looking out for me and making sure that I'm taking care of myself. And I'm so grateful for that. I think having a support system can make or break your treatment.
Mm,
It can be really hard to go through a mental illness alone,
yeah.
especially when, you don't and I've told my boyfriend, I'm like, there are times I just can't take care of myself.
Mhm.
Like especially when I'm really, really depressed or really, really manic, I can't take care of myself.
Yeah.
And those are times where I really lean on my support system the most. Or if I don't, they recognize that I should be, and they're just actively there for me.
Yeah.
But I work hard to like activate my support system. So when I notice that I'm feeling crappy, I go to them and I say, "Hey, just so you know, I'm not feeling too well." Um, my cousin, who I'm very close with, when I was in college, we went to the same school, and I was having a really hard time, and so we devised this little, just very basic system because sometimes it's hard to tell someone that you're depressed or hard to tell someone that you want to self harm or that you're in this really bad place. And I didn't always know how to communicate that with words, and so we devised this system. It was like a 1 through 10. 1 is I'm totally fine, I don't need any support. 10 is I need to be hospitalized. And so when I needed support, rather than having to say what was going on or explain my feelings, I would just text him a number,
Mhm.
and so I think it was 7 through 10 meant like I needed a lot of support. 4 to 6 was like, I just need you to look out for me and be there for me. And then anything like 1 to 4 was like, I'm either fine or I'm on the verge of beginning to struggle. And so that number system made it really easy for me to communicate with the people I love about what I'm going through without having to explain it in words.
Wow, that's really helpful. I think not just for people with bipolar, but also everyone else. So that's really
Yeah.
great to hear that you've got that. I also heard
Yeah.
you say that there are things that trigger you. Would you
Mhm.
share what those are?
Oh, yeah. My biggest trigger is just stress, which is so annoying because you can't just get rid of stress in your life. Um, my biggest trigger is definitely stress, but then depending on my mood, I can be triggered by really little things. Like if I woke up in a crappy mood, like if I get cut off by someone on the highway, that can just set me off for the whole day. Or something that happens a lot is if I'm getting ready for something and I can't find the top I want or my hair is not doing what I want it to do, I can get really, really overwhelmed and stressed about it and just I can just explode. And the explosion will last for like 15, 20 minutes and then I'm calm again. It's like it never even happened. Um, Other things that trigger me honestly can be family. The holidays can be really triggering, especially with the holidays going on right now.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
all of those things can be super, super triggering for me. Just because, I don't have the best relationship with some of my family members, and the holidays can be really stressful. And especially like I get stressed even noticing I'm going downhill because I get worried. I'm like, okay, I know I'm balancing and I'm wobbling on the tightrope, but don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. I put a lot of pressure on myself to be well and to not fall off the tightrope because I'm always afraid that if I fall, maybe the harness won't catch me this time and maybe
Mm,
this will be the time it breaks and I'm just gonna like fall to my death. And so I stress myself out probably more than anything else stresses me out.
yeah.
Um, and the biggest stressor is just being stressed about literally anything, which
Yeah.
is super inconvenient because that's just life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that there's steps that you can take other than something like medication to like help you with those triggers?
Typically, I'm like, okay, I use your coping skills and I take
Mhm.
some deep breaths. And the biggest thing for me, sometimes I recognize that I'm like, for instance, in the depression that I've been in lately, I recognize that I'm depressed. But if I'm being completely honest, I'm not ready to not be depressed. And part of it is because
Mhm.
I feel like if I just it almost feels like if I don't let myself fully feel the depression and fully acknowledge everything that's going on inside of me, it's kind of like you put it under a rug. You use your coping skills, it kind of goes under the rug. And I feel as though if I don't let myself fully feel it, more and more will go under the rug. And then I'm not going to be able to walk over the rug. So I'm going to trip and I'm going to fall. And the rug is going to be really lumpy and nobody can walk over it. And suddenly everybody's miserable. And so I definitely use my coping skills. Like one I love is just coloring. I have a lot of adult coloring books when I'm feeling anxious or really in my head. I love to color. I love to play solitaire. So like it gets me out of my head. It gets me to think
Yeah.
about literally anything else than whatever is happening. And then I do, it's so funny. It's called in my contract for the classes, it's called ninja classes, which is so funny. And it's essentially this like meditative yoga movement class, and I really love it. And so I do that a couple times a week, and it just kind of helps me get into my body in a different
Mhm.
way and stretch and move and breathe and focus on my breathing. It gives me a safe space to just be,
Yeah.
and sometimes you do have to just be without all the pressure of the world on you.
Yeah, I found yoga for me has also really helped me through some tough times. I think you
Yeah.
don't realize how much of the weight you carry of your emotions in your body. So
Mhm.
for me, yoga gives me that chance to really feel my feels. Like sometimes I'll find myself like getting teary eyed and I'm like, wow, like I feel like I'm releasing that emotion by sitting with it.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
exercise in general can be really great for me. Like
Yeah.
just sweating sometimes when I like
Yes.
sweat, I'm just like, oh, I feel like all the toxins have left my body and I and I just feel like a cleaner person. Like, okay, all the bad stuff is
Yeah.
has exited out of my pores
Yeah.
and I shower it off and then it's not there. Something I do in the shower every now and then that can be helpful is I sit in the shower and I don't like use soap or anything. I'm just letting the water run over me and I just imagine the water is just washing away all the bad stuff that's going on, all the negativity. I just kind of visualize that like just washing over me, washing all the negative stuff off, scrub it off with the soap. I love probably my favorite thing in the world is a body scan. I love a good
Yeah.
body scan.
Yeah.
I love, oh my gosh, it makes me feel, it connects my mind and body in a really
Mm.
great way that allows me to be so much more at peace.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting what you said about the showering though. It's interesting. That's such a like a human trait. Like that's where I think like baptism comes from as well, like
Mm,
cleansing of it, like it feels
yeah,
like you're like cleansing your soul. So it sounds like you've been dealing with this for some time. When were you
yeah.
diagnosed?
I was diagnosed when I was 17.
Okay.
I was diagnosed after I spent about a month in the hospital. And so I, the diagnosis definitely made sense. And I also have, since then, I have struggles with eating. I've always kind of struggled with my eating. That was really more of a problem when I was in high school. And then I'm also diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
And what does that mean?
That one's a tricky one to explain. Essentially, the name doesn't really do it justice, but really what it is, it's an emotional dysregulation disorder more than anything else. It's just having really, really big and disproportional feelings to events. Like I said earlier, with where let's say my hair is not going well and I just like explode. That is a part of the borderline that I can acknowledge is
Mm,
happening.
yeah.
The biggest difference for because borderline and bipolar have a lot of overlapping symptoms because they're both really rooted in emotional dysregulation, and so I can recognize the bipolar for me is very cyclical. Like I know that right now I'm in a depressive cycle, but when I have those daily or outbursts during the day where they're just really big and explosive and then they chill out, I can recognize that's probably the borderline, whereas my cyclical symptoms are the bipolar. But it can definitely be confusing because it's struggling between like, is it this or is it that? Does it matter if it's either one? You know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Does it matter? You're feeling how you're feeling. How has this impacted for you, your support system, your relationships?
I know right now I'm in a very happy, healthy, long-term relationship. He's the best guy in the world. I have really, really close friends and close relationships that I've had for years. Part of that is I'm at this point in my life, I'm very selective with who I let into my life and my circle because I really believe that the people you surround yourself with have a huge impact on what you think of yourself and how you treat yourself.
Mm,
Um, but when I was younger, I know that my relationships were really rocky and up and down and really unhealthy, and it was exhausting and miserable. And a lot of times, I can recognize that I am toxic. I think we talk a lot about other people's red flags and oh, they're toxic and they do this and that and whatever. But I am also toxic. I have also done toxic things, and I can't just put that pressure and weight on everybody else because I
mm,
realize that I have done bad things. I have gaslit people. I have manipulated people. I have done things that I'm not proud of, you know? And I'm at a point now where I spent so much time learning about how to be a healthy person in a relationship without being codependent.
mm,
And so now I'm in a better place. But even just like 3 years ago, my relationships were really unstable and rocky and difficult. And I tied how they felt about me to my self worth rather than how I felt about me. It was always, well, if they don't like this thing about me, then it must be horrible, rather than, do I like this thing about me? You know?
yeah, definitely. And you think that those symptoms and the way that you've been in those relationships is a product of having bipolar.
I think it's a product of being young and stupid, and a product of having a mental illness, and a product of just not knowing what I was doing. just
Mm.
not knowing how to be in a healthy relationship because nobody teaches you that. Like, you don't go to school and they don't teach you healthy relationships or how to set boundaries. They don't teach you any of that stuff. And a lot of parents don't teach it either. And a lot of parents don't even model that behavior. And
Mhm.
so, not having kind of a baseline of how do I communicate effectively? How do I communicate without being an asshole? How, how do
Yeah.
I express my love? How do I express my needs? How
Yeah.
do I love somebody else in their love language rather than expecting them to be loved in mine? And so all of those things I've spent a lot of time just trying to learn and be better at because I want healthy, happy relationships. It makes life better and easier. So
Yeah.
I've worked really hard on just educating myself so that my relationships can be the best ones that they can be and I can be the best person that I can be.
Yeah, you definitely sound like you do a lot of self-work. Is that kind
I
of a
try.
product of everything you've, like, experienced? The reflection?
Honestly, yeah, I think like I truly think that if I didn't have a mental illness, that I probably wouldn't know so much about what I know. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't have I don't think I would have had the opportunity to get to know myself on that level. And I
Yeah.
don't think I would have had the opportunity to learn how to get to know other people on that level either.
Yeah. So, would you have any advice for someone who is having bipolar that you can share that's helped for you?
Yeah, I think my biggest advice is, well, a couple of things. One, please meds, I personally believe that being medicated with bipolar is probably the best first step because what meds can do for you is they can lessen the symptoms so you can start working on the deep down stuff. It can be scary because finding the right meds can be a pain in the butt. I had one medication, I think I was 17 or 18, and I was on a med and they told me like 1% of people have this side effect. You'll be fine. And then I go to my doctor the next week and I'm like, so I'm lactating. And mhm,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was I was producing like breast milk and it was
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah.
So finding the right med can be really uncomfortable because I was lactating for like a
Yeah.
year
Wow.
and it was so weird, so weird.
Yeah.
Um, but medication can be so helpful just to get you to a baseline so you can start working on the deep down stuff. And then also having a support system is so, so valuable. Find your support system, activate it when you need it, meaning let them know, like, hey, I'm noticing myself going into a bad place. And if you don't notice it, let them know, like, hey, I'm not always really great at noticing my symptoms. Can you help me and let me know when you think that I
Yeah.
might be struggling? And being able to activate that support system is so valuable because you have other eyes on yourself. You have other
Mm.
people who can look at you objectively and say, hey, it doesn't seem like you're doing well. What can I do to support you?
I think that's great because people sometimes don't want to upset someone if they can see they're going that way. So if you've already
Totally.
given someone permission to say, "Look, I think you're going back down that way again. I'd love to help." It makes it easier.
Yeah. And something that I do with all of the people in my life who are in my support system is I have like a little care plan that I made. And so essentially what it is, it's so basic and anybody can do it. And it can be for anything that you're struggling with. It doesn't have to be bipolar, but I have a side that's for mania and I have a side for depression. And each side kind of has a list of coping skills that I can use when I'm struggling with either or. And so sometimes for me, and I know a lot of other people feel this way, it can be so hard to identify a coping skill in the moment and to actively utilize it. Because in that moment, you're so overwhelmed and stressed and anxious about the world. And the first thing you think of is not, oh, let me color and do deep breathing. And so,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and so having a care plan for me to use so I can refer back to it and be like, okay, this is a coping skill I can use during this time. But also giving it to people in your support system so that if you can't take care of yourself, like I sometimes can't, they can have a list of basically how to take care of me when I can't take
Ooh.
care of
And
myself,
and
which is
on that, what's on that list? How can others support you?
Yeah, so for me, like if I'm manic, taking a hot shower or a bath to calm me down, listening to relaxing music, watching a favorite movie, reading a book, having a hot cup of tea, sometimes just like sitting there and having someone to talk to about what I'm experiencing. With depression, a lot of times, like I don't necessarily want help from people. I just want someone to hold space for me to be really bummed about whatever I'm bummed about. Like have some chocolate, eat some of my favorite foods, watch a feel good movie, or just cry. Just have someone sit there and let me cry and feel my feelings and hold me and tell me it's going to be okay. Pat my head.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all I need is just someone to hold space for what I'm going through.
Yes, and not try and solve it for you.
Yes, something that
Yeah.
I hate. I hate having to explain why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And so and my people know that. It's like when I'm feeling that way, I'm not ready to talk about it. All I want is to just sit in the uncomfortable feeling until I feel like I can talk about it. And that's something that my boyfriend and I kind of struggled with in the beginning was he is like immediate discussion fixer person, and I need space to kind of work out what I'm going through first person.
Yeah.
And so, finding a way to just give me the space to process because I'm not ready to talk about it, and giving him the time and allowing me to communicate with him because that's what he needs. And so something we do is sometimes I just can't say, like verbally say. It feels like there's a verbal block. And
Mm.
so what helps me is sometimes when I can't speak it, I write it down and I like it sounds silly, but I'll be in the office and he'll be in our hallway and I'll write it down on a piece of paper with the door closed and I'll slide it under the door because I get worried about the confrontation of it. Like I don't want to see his reaction almost. And so I
Mhm.
write it down, I slid it under the door, he reads it, and then we come together. And that kind of gets rid of the awkward confrontation of it that I struggle with, but it allows the communication to still be there, which is
Yeah.
important for both of us.
It sounds great that you've been able to kind of teach each other how to support each other. That's awesome.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
but thank you so much for coming on. Where can the listeners, if they want to get in touch, would you mind? And if yes, where?
Oh yeah, anybody can DM me on my Instagram account at having bipolar. Please DM me. I love when people talk to me. I love hearing your stories. I love getting to know you. Please reach out because I just love it. I love building a community and hearing other people's experiences. I think it's so valuable.
I think that's what people don't realize is after the episode's over, they have their own takeaways. They're like, wow. And then they go about their day. But, we're here like,
Yeah.
what did you think?
Yeah.
So let us
Yeah,
know.
please tell me.
Well, thank you so much. And hey, I'm giving you a big hug right now. And
Thank you.
please lean on your support system. Big hugs, air hugs.
Air hugs.
Okay, have a good day. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.